Hello, this is Glenn from Lights On Multimedia Mind Arts. I'd like to show you a different approach to portraiture using Affinity Designer than you've probably seen before. Instead of working like a comic book artist who might reduce the opacity to the reference photo and then put down outlines to set shapes and boundaries, followed by inking, various layers of shading, midtone, and highlights, I'm going to show you a method influenced by a style developed by Cubist painters like Pablo Picasso from the early 20th century. There are many advantages to working in this way. One, you don't have to spend time labeling and organizing sections, but you will still be able to find and edit any section of your image with a simple double click. Two, you can see and make decisions about color, saturation, and value for each section while the reference photo is still visible. No guessing or trying to remember what an image looks like. Three, it's difficult to approach a vector art interpretation of an image from corner to corner all at once. This method allows you to divide the canvas into sections. You can then refine each section to whatever degree helps you express your intent. 4. Well, you'll still need to make artistic decisions as you develop your image. Those decisions come as a result of an orderly process. Be forewarned, however, parts of the method are easy to do but fairly repetitive and don't take much thought. You can always listen to an audiobook or a podcast while you work. Here's a very simplified Cubist portrait I made some years ago. Part of the point of making a Cubist portrait is not just to create a unique portrait of someone, but to form new ways of seeing and new ways of recording and interpreting what you see. To learn. With each portrait you do, you'll learn more and more about how to use Affinity Designer to represent images in ways you wouldn't have thought possible. The important thing is to learn from the process, not to necessarily create an image you want to hang on the wall. A very simplified process like this would be a good place to start. Keep the number of sides of your shapes small. Try representing the planes of the face using just triangles and maybe shapes with 4 or possibly 5 sides. A portrait usually consists of the sitter, or the subject, which we will call the positive space. The background, or the space around our sitter, we'll call the negative space. In this portrait, the negative space was left blank, but there are other ways to represent negative space rather than leaving it blank. Vector shapes can be used to describe both positive and negative areas in different ways. How these shapes are used will depend on you, the artist, and the subject and the elements of the image. Now, I had downloaded this portrait of a young woman using Affinity Designer's stock tab. Any image will probably work out fine, but it'll be easier if you start with a front-facing pose. I think it's a good idea to start with the nose. I know there are portraitists who start with the eyes, and the eyes are the focus of Western portraiture, but eyes are easy. It's more difficult to make a nose look like it sticks out and not do some sort of weird W shape or make a letter L. I've seen that, right? So I'm going to draw a reference line down the center. I'm going to make sure I'm using my line mode, and I've got the pen tool, and I'm going to make a line from here to here, and then I'm going to take my node tool and I'm going to center it up through the tip of her nose to about like that. And now I'm going to use my switch to the, actually I'm going to push this twice. And I'm going to give it some thickness so I can see it. All right, so now I'm going to use my pen tool, but I'm not going to use the line mode. I'm going to go to the polygon mode. This is all about polygons. All right. So I'm going to imagine a triangle here. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. You don't have to close that shape up. It's not necessary. Then I'm going to deselect it, and I'm going to use my eyedrop tool and click in the center. And it's actually a good idea when you sample, pick a larger sample area than 1 by 1. I think maybe 17 by 17 or 65 by 65 is much preferable. And then you can close this back up and you can see where you are. Does that seem like it's light enough or dark enough? You know, take a look at this, go back and forth. If you feel that it's maybe a little too dark, then come over to your tools over here on the side and increase the luminance just a little bit, if that's what you think. Second, I'm going to create a second triangle. I can sort of imagine, oh, how do I want to do this? Let's go this way. So I'm going to go from here to here to here, and then I've got my triangle, and it's not quite matching up, and this will be something that happens to you a lot. Simply hold down your Command key and then pull this down. Zoom back out, and then go back to your pen tool, and then create the second shape. I have a mouse that has a wheel, and it is extremely useful, moving in and out. Whenever you're working on any artwork, you should be moving in and out all the time to see what it looks like up close, to see what it looks like in perspective. You can always go back and reselect some of these things here and make adjustments. Good, that's the nice thing about vector art. Okay, so now I'm going to go over on this side. Oh, you know, did I sample that? I'm not sure I did. So you can go back over here, click in there, turn that on, come over on the other side. I think I sampled that already, but that's okay. And now you can see the difference of the colors in the planes. It might be that this bigger triangle needs to be split and to show that there's a change in the plane there, but we can do that later. Like I said, this is the version that this is that sort of very simplified Cubist style, which is faster and so on. I could continue this, but I think you get the idea. And as you continue this, like I said, stay symmetrical around the nose. And then as you get farther away, the broader areas like the forehead, well, you can use bigger shapes for that. The areas around in the eyes, you might want to use smaller shapes. So, you know, having to where that's where the attention is. And what I'm going to do is show you now a finished version. I'm not going to do a time lapse. And this will give you a better idea of, this is maybe the shapes are smaller than would be in an otherwise simplified version. But one of the things I would like to point out is that the positive shape, that is the shapes that describe the sitter, are triangles and regular, they have straight sides, they're cubes, but the background is actually based on tessellations, which if you've seen my earlier videos, you know my fascination with these shapes. And these are very organic tessellations. And I did that because if you look at the background, you'll see that it's out of focus. This is a bokeh effect from the photograph. And how do you represent that with a flat plane, right? Do you make the whole thing flat? Do you break it up? And so in this case, I wanted it to be feathery. And so I used a shape that I felt represented that. So in this case, I separated the face from the background using the shapes. The shapes are very important. As time goes on, we want to see the shapes less. That's kind of like the stepping. As we step through our process, as we develop in our portraiture, we want to show the shapes less. We can still use them imaginatively, but we want to think about how do we want to approach this for the entire canvas. And then the next video, I will show you a completely different approach, still using these vector shapes to break up the surface of the canvas and in a cubist style. I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.